Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. My guest today is Manu, a legend in the sport. He's been on the show before. This is the second one we've done with him, but I didn't know this. He was the weather router and one of the supporters for Pierre in the X-Pyr. And he sent me a text right after the race, and I was, of course, glued to it for the week. An amazing race, and Pierre was actually out in front going into the end, and then Chrigel and Maxime got him. They made a couple of really nice moves, and of course Chrigel, very crazy ending, and Chrigel was able to beat Maxime against all the odds yet again. So I thought it'd be really fun to talk to a supporter. Usually we talk to the athletes, but talk to a supporter and get their take on the philosophy and the risk and how it all comes together. This was Pierre's first hike and fly race. He's, of course, a very famous comp pilot and really big name in the sport, but this was his first foray into hike and fly, and he got third against some pretty tough competition. So he had a great race, and obviously they had a great team, and so this is the story from kind of behind the scenes. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Cheers. Manu, good to see you and have you on the show again. It's wonderful to see your smiling face. It sounds like you guys had quite an adventure in the X-Pyr, so we're going to be talking a lot about the race, but I thought we should start would be to talk about Pierre a little bit. For those who don't follow comps very much, who are listening to the show, may not be familiar with Pierre, one of the more famous pilots in the world, but tell us about Pierre, and then we'll get into, I want to talk to you about what it was like supporting. That's it's something I'm going to do for the first time here in a month over at the Dolomiti. But tell me about Pierre, and then we'll get into your adventure.
Hey, Gavin, cool to meet you again on Cloud-Based Mayhem. So Pierre is, for people that do not know him, was a really classic comp champion. He won the FAI awards in 2017 and PWC Super Final in 2018. And starting from that moment, he started to pay attention to those type of competition like X-Alp, X-Pyr, and he started to train. So that was really 2018. He really started to physically train, for this type of comp. And he had, the ambition to participate to the X-Pyr 2020, which was cancelled due to COVID issues, And here we are. He arrived in 2022 on the X-Pyr. He was physically really ready, but the team was, I would say, kind of improvised. He called me a few weeks before the comp asking me if I wanted to be support. And then for the two other guys, it was pretty much the same. So we went there just to see, a little bit. But finally we had a good adventure, good sensation, and it was pretty fun.
Yeah, and I was watching the race. I got up at 4:00 in the morning all week to watch it. It was going on during our U.S. Nationals, so I was up early anyway. But he made some nice moves. Really, the big day 3, where all the leaders got way out in front and had some really nice flying. But the weather at the start was tough, and he was fast on the ground as well. Those first couple days they looked pretty miserable.
Yes, the two first days were pretty miserable, and I believe Maxime did the best job, from the team. Even if at the end of the second day, Chrigel managed to make a move. But the choice of Maxime, they were a little bit better. And the third day was the very first day we could fly, and looking at the weather forecast, at that moment we believed maybe it would be the only flying day of the comp. but finally it happened that we had some other flying days.
Wow.
Yeah, but everybody was like, that day we must be at the right place, at the right moment. And we had a third day, a group of leaders where we had mainly Maxime and Chrigel, and also they were together with Noah maybe, and Simon for sure. And so basically we had those leaders, in the front, and Pierre was a little bit behind. And we made a weather forecast and strategy. And for us, it was clear that in the high altitude, the air was quite stable until late, and it would be unstable in the lower layer earlier. So this is the reason why we did not follow them, because we arrived a little bit later in Kandanshu, and my plan was to go on the east face, stay relatively low to benefit, the instability we had. And finally, Pierre, I think it took off 2 hours before the other guys. Well, they made the first glide, then they climbed again, and then they had to wait for conditions to take off again. And at that moment, Pierre was flying for a while. We had probably, I would say, 3-4 hours. We were 3-4 hours behind at that moment. And during the flight, at one moment, we passed first. And then they had a good line. And, well, in the Peña Montanesa, we had only 6 kilometers, we were just 6 kilometers behind. But that was definitely a good move we did. And on my opinion, they, in this type of competition, they had no other choice, because they wouldn't wait, 3 hours to take off in the lower layers. So basically they had to go ahead. And this is sometimes you're trapped like this. And we had the same situation, but reversed. We had to wait, later on, and then they caught with us again, that was on day 5. But in some moment, you just need to do something, because the athletes, they say, hey, I'm not gonna wait. And so, of course, you choose, one option, but you know that later on, in another place would be better. And that was perfect for us, because we were late and we arrived exactly at the right moment to take off on the east face low. And they just took off and they arrived super high, but it was not in place and they had to wait. And so basically, I would say we passed them. And then, they got a little bit lucky on that, because normally when you arrive from the route they took, there is a place where pass it is rather complicated. And I really believed we would pass in front, but so it worked very well for them. And so everybody was kind of surprised around Broto how they could pass, the national park. But yeah, that's the game. But finally, the move was quite good for us, yeah, for sure. The decision and the way Pierre put it, into reality was quite good. But that was kind of tricky, because we know that to pass from the east face, to the Colorado, that would be kind of tricky. And he was actually there were two together, to cross, and finally one landed and Pierre managed to escape. So it was not, let's say, crystal clear it would be good, but he managed to do it, and then he was clearly in the front. So that was the first move. That was not too bad. And then as the guys, they had a good line, he was chasing them till the end, and they were putting like a crazy rhythm, and that was virtually impossible to catch up with them. I know he kept the distance, but he couldn't catch up with them. That was very intense flying. Everybody was so motivated, and yeah. I have something to say also about what happened in that flight, is that what Chrigel, Simon, and Maxime did, from Montlude to go to the first point of the X, like Arbas, is just amazing. That route, I don't think, I know a little bit what happened in the Pyrenees, but maybe I make a mistake, but I don't think anybody ever reached from Montlude, Arbas using that route. They just went, in the mountains, on the lee side of little hills. They were barely protected, and then they managed to catch thermal, to climb in the thermal and then push into the wind to pass in front of the mountain. They did that 4 times to reach Arbas, and for me, what they did was just from another that probably one part of the X-Pyr. I was so impressed with what Maxime, Chrigel, and Simon achieved, in terms of choice of route, which, we know it's impossible. They didn't know it's impossible, so they did it, basically. So, but, it opened eyes, and we were just like, what? When I saw them, from Montlude go in direction of that south face, I just said, okay, they are dead, it's never gonna work, and then, it worked 4 times. So basically, we learn, we learn from those comps for sure.
I was going to ask, because you live in the Pyrenees and Pierre lives in the Pyrenees, how I've always thought that with the X-Alps, the pilots who live in Europe, have a pretty clear advantage because they know it's a complicated place and they know the different systems and the valley winds and everything. And it's really important to have knowledge of a place. But when I look at the Pyrenees, it's even in many ways much more complicated. The roads never go in the direction of the route. And so the walking it looks really hard. But how important is it for the athletes to have knowledge of what the flying is like there and the fern and all that? What do you think about that? Because it is interesting that you said, Simon and Chrigel, they're doing these things that the locals would go, nah, you don't do that.
Yeah. On one hand, it's good to know the place. On the other hand, when you know it, you're limited. So that's basically when you open, when you get in a place with fresh eyes and you come with your experience from other places. Basically, like the famous day, Chrigel took off from, that was on day 4. He took off from Pic du Midi. In these conditions, we never fly. Nobody flies, in France. Like we don't fly. Pierre doesn't fly in these conditions regularly. And what did Chrigel? I looked at the track, and that's an amazing understanding of what could be wave flying. Okay, but when you learn paragliding in France, the first thing you learn, in the French Pyrenees, you don't fly when it's south wind. And then little by little, you learn that when the south wind is not too strong, then you can still do things. And maybe the best days we are with light south wind. But then, when the wind is that strong, everybody stays home and take care of the tomatoes in his garden, And basically, he just amazed us, there. But that was just, like a certain type of flying in very specific conditions. It's amazing. It's Chrigel. But what they did, between Montlude and Arbas, for me, is something we could do, but we never do because we don't believe it might work. In competition, they go that route with the strong feeling that it's the best thing to do, and actually it works. So that's, as I said, on one hand, you know some stuff for regular conditions, but when the conditions are not regular, maybe the guys are able to invent something super special. But even in regular conditions, because that day was regular conditions, they're able to invent new routes that finally, from the dogma we have, everybody has, more or less dogma. You are not really ready in your mind to break the dogma and invent this type of solution to get from one place to another one. Pretty much they stayed on the line, which was strategically, well, when you, in terms of out of line in the Pyrenees, that was kind of super weird. And they stayed on the line, shortest line, from one point to another one. And finally, they managed to achieve, the task to reach the goal. I mean, the place they wanted to reach. And following this line was, for me at least, really amazing. But Pierre, he did another route, more classic, and finally he got to the place not so long. I wouldn't say what they did was crazily efficient, because finally at the end Pierre got to Arbas just a little bit after them, and at the Peña Montanesa he had at least 6 kilometers behind. So I wouldn't say what they did was just mega efficient and then they put everybody back in the wind. But however it worked, and that already is quite amazing. This is basically my opinion.
I don't remember, Manu, if it was day 5 or 6, but I was watching, and pretty much that was the day that was supposed to be 70 kilometers an hour wind at the top of the peaks, really, really, really strong southwest. And when I just got on and watched a few times, and everyone was on the ground. Maxime and Chrigel were quite close to one another. They had kind of taken a different route the night before, but they were pretty close to one another, hiking up in the Alpine. And then the next time I refreshed, Pierre was in the air and got way out in front of those guys. I mean, and I was watching his speeds, and they were fast, but they weren't too crazy. I was seeing a lot of, 55K an hour, 60K an hour. So it seemed like it wasn't too rowdy. But was that a scary flight? Was that because the forecast that day looked pretty unflyable? It looked really, really strong. And I would have thought it would have been pretty scary. The nice thing is he had a little bit of tailwind. And so, but he made a move there that was incredible. And it looked to me like he was in a position that he could win the race. That at the end, it was the end of the day. Those guys didn't fly at the end of the day, and Pierre got quite a ways out ahead.
Yeah, that day was pretty incredible. The strong wind day was the day before, in fact. That the day where Chrigel took off from Pic du Midi. Well, Pierre also took off and Maxime took off, but Chrigel was the first to take off, and that was kind of hairy. The day after, this is the day we did that special move, and I'm so surprised. For me, it's just, something I don't understand, how Chrigel did not see it. For me, it's maybe, Chrigel doesn't make many mistakes. But I think that they did a mistake for sure. And for me, it was very sure it wouldn't be flyable around 3,000 meters, because the forecast, as you say, was 60, 70 kilometers per hour. And the situation for forecasting was not really comfortable, because we had two fronts, passing, the first days. It was very unstable. All the models, they were saying something different, and we were spending our time to find the good model for the day, X day, have the good model. And I had to use 3 different models during the race. I didn't use the same model, for the wind, and the same model for the instability, because, one model was better for instability, another one. And it changed, during the race. So that was really a hard work to be on the good model to make the forecast. That day I was pretty sure taking the route Chrigel took, he wouldn't fly. And I was pretty sure going to Castejón de Sos, we would fly. And I had absolutely no doubt about it, because the day before, the wind was stronger. And one guy of the X-Pyr, he passed by, which was really late, he passed by Castejón and he flew. And I had also a report, from the schools in Castejón that the conditions were quite strong but flyable. I would say not flyable for students of the school, but flyable for athletes, And this is basically one guy, I don't remember his name, maybe a Spanish guy, but he took off, in Castellón, and he flew a bit, in direction of Sauvegarde, to come back to France. At the moment, the lead of the comp was going the other way. He was trying to go to, I would say, Arbas, and the guys that were coming, from back, from Pic du Midi. So basically, I was pretty sure it would be flyable, but there is a little, very special phenomenon that happens in Castellón, is that when you have southwest wind, in Castellón is southeast. Not for long, as soon as you fly a little bit, then you are again in the southwest flow. But in the lower layer, it was super clear in the airgrams that below 2,000 meters, the wind was not too strong. And we have also, I would say, a wind central, a wind weather station at 2,400 meters, on top of Castellón. And I had, the history of that station. I was looking at the history, and I know this weather station is a Venturi. So when we have south wind, it always, overrate, the wind. And I knew it was flyable for Pierre, the day before. And so that day, even more flyable because the wind was forecasted weaker. But at 3,000 meters, it was super strong for sure. And when I saw Chrigel going in direction of Gourblanc, then I said, wow, that's our chance, And at that moment, it's always so complicated to take the decision because you have Chrigel going one way, you have Maxime following another route, but finally the same strategy. And you say to the guys, okay, we'll do something totally different. And then the guys are like, hey, are you sure? But yeah, we did it. It worked. And at the end of the day, we had 33 kilometers. We were, I would say in the morning, we were probably 5 hours or 6, behind Chrigel. And at the end of the day, we were 33 kilometers in front of him. And he walked crazy. I measured what he walked that was like from hell, I think he made more than 4,000 meters, positive, and maybe 4,500 meters, going down. And we walked just 2,000 meters. So, and the number of kilometers, not even mentioning the numbers of kilometers. And at the end of the day, when Maxime was more or less catching up with him, I watched and he was still climbing at 1,000 meters per hour, After that long walk, I was just like, what a machine, And Pierre was so happy to do all that route, flying. And he validated, the stuff. And we were so happy to have 33 kilometers, to be 33 kilometers in the front, but I was pretty sure it wouldn't last much because they were sleeping high. The southwest wind was quite strong. I really believe they could take off early and fly in our direction kind of far away, but I never imagined they would get to Torre del Ori that high. I really believe maybe they land, at the foot of Torre del Ori, and maybe they have to walk up 1,700 meters, to get to the takeoff. But actually, that was crazy because Chrigel and Maxime, they managed, to soar the mountain. Then there is a big valley to pass. They arrived on the mountain. They managed to climb a little bit. And then if you look with a glide ratio of 12, from that mountain, you arrive at the foot, and they arrived almost at the top, And when they arrived at the place Pierre was, finally, they couldn't climb. They had to land and walk. So it was impossible for Pierre to take off early. If he would have taken off early, he would have bombed out, and then you lose everything, So basically, I was kind of happy that he landed at the bottom of that mountain the day before. So he had to walk up the mountain, because if he landed at the top, he would have said, okay, I go. I couldn't have kept him here. So that was good to have him, walk a while, not to arrive too early on the top. And when he arrived there, he looked at the condition. He said to me, it's not too good for the moment. And we knew the guys already took off. They were arriving. I said, okay, let's wait and let's fly with them anyways. If we go alone, we just take the risk to bomb out, and anyways they will catch up with us, later. And it was also the problem of the CTR, the airspace of l'ACO d'Urgel, which makes you need to go in the back. So if you don't have a minimum of instability, and you cannot go. My forecast was the instability would be good around 10:30, 11, and in fact they managed to escape at 10, but it was like 30 minutes before, but they managed, to climb just a little bit, playing the game, the three together. They managed to do it. One pilot alone, on my opinion, even at 10 would have been super complicated to reach, the mountain range in the back and keep on going, pass by, Andorre, and finally they nailed the turn point super early. It was, I don't remember, 12:30 or something like this, and that was really amazing, how they managed to fly so fast between Torre del Ori and the Cerdagne.
Manu, what were the different roles on your team? It sounds like you were in charge of the weather, but you said there was 3 supporters. Is that right? And how did you? Because it sounded like the team came together kind of late and was improvised. I know how much goes in. There's a lot to do when you're supporting an athlete. How did you divvy it up? Who was doing what, and what would you maybe change if you had the opportunity to do it again?
The team was 4 people in total, with Pierre and 3 people. 2 guys, they were on the field with him. Okay. The 2 guys on the field, they were quite strong, in running and walking in the mountains or on the flat also. One was more specialist of flat, and the other one is really comfortable, in the mountains, climbing mountains, is quite strong. And so basically they would switch, all the time. But Pierre barely got alone, to walk. They were, all the time, supporting him on the field. And that was good for the mentor of Pierre to have one guy, running with him almost all the time. My job initially was to provide a weather forecast in the morning and another one at night. But finally, I was in front of my computer from 5 a.m. to midnight because the situation was so complicated, so unstable, that it was really important sometimes to update information during the day. And finally it happened that I was giving also, that was also in the deal at the beginning, I had to give my opinion on the strategy. At the beginning I was just, giving an overlook, and at the end I was a little bit more, present, on the strategy. What we would change, I think, in terms of team, we would just change nothing, because that was an excellent team. Pierre was super ready physically. The 2 guys on the field, they did an incredible job. That's Nicolas and Mathieu. And finally, I didn't do too bad, on the strategy and the weather forecasting. So we did quite a good job together. Maybe we could just, there were some communication problem, localization problem we should work on. And also I just realized, talking with some friends of mine like Antoine Girard, that they have developed a full set of tools, to figure out what is the best way to take. If it's flyable, just glide down, or if it's not flyable, you need to walk all the way, blah, blah, blah. And so this would have eased clearly my working load. And I really believe, we were absolutely not ready, on this type of matter, and we have a huge progression on this field. But basically at the end, you just realize that everything finally comes sometimes just on luck, good luck, bad luck, maybe. I don't think when we went to Castellón we had luck. I don't believe this, but probably when on day 3 we decided to choose the east face, and the fact that Pierre managed to climb again, on the Colorado, this was probably luck, when Chrigel and Pierre together, they cross the Cerdagne and they make a low save, 80 meters for Pierre. So this is sometimes, luck and, talent, of course, but sometimes you're grounded. And decision, you're a little bit too much on the right, on the left, and you're grounded. And so basically, this is it. The fact that, at the end, this epic conclusion we had, with, the 3 guys, and what happened on the Canigou and everything. So sometimes, you put a lot of things, together, and it relies more on being at the right place at the right moment, and sometimes it's just a question of luck. Sometimes you're late and you arrive somewhere and poof, it works. And so, that's but in terms of improvement, we have a large room of improvement on the tools, I believe. The team itself was naturally ready, and it works super well, on the field, and they had a super good time together. They enjoyed, and me behind my computer, I had also, a kind of fun. So we enjoyed, the adventure. There is also the point you mentioned before. Yeah, you asked me how important is it to know, the mountain range. In fact, Pierre doesn't know very well the whole mountain range. When he flies, he always flies from our valley. Of course, a few weeks before the X-Pyr, he flew 200 kilometers, I say a triangle, 200 kilometers in the north face of the Pyrenees, which was never done before. But he didn't do it with he did it with the X1, and with his heavy harness, with his comp gear, So basically, the place he knows very well is something like from our place, 50 kilometers to the west, and let's say 100 kilometers or 80 kilometers to the 50 to the west, and I would say something like 100 to the east. But he hardly flies in Spain. Maybe he had a comp, sometimes in Castellón, but that was not really a place he knows. But something maybe a room of improvement, I don't know, I should discuss this with him, is fly more maybe with the specific gear he use. I don't know, maybe this could help also, but he had very little flying time, air time with this specific gear he used, for this comp.
He flew the climber, I understand, and then what harness did he fly?
It was a specific harness from Chrigel, a pro harness for this type of comp.
Yeah, that's what I used in the last race as well, that Chrigel Pro. And then, do you think does he have his eyes on the X Alps? Will that be something he'll do in the future?
We have a meeting Monday to make kind of a debrief of the adventure and discuss a little bit all those topics and see, what else. I know he loves the Pyrenees. Discussing at the end of the race with the other guys, many of them, they said the X-Alps is less demanding, like what we did in this X-Pyr, and so I don't know, we'll see. I think everything is open, but that was tough, the 2 first days, they were super tough, and it impacted a lot, the rest of the race, starting with 2 days where you barely fly. I mean, the second day, they just made maybe 1 glide. That's kind of tough, and it's very specific training you must do on the flat, on the on the road, which I'm not sure Pierre actually did, and so basically that was kind of tough. But many guys said, okay, X-Alps, you have to start, 1 hour earlier, you have to end, 1 hour later, but finally you always manage to fly somehow, and it's less hard, like this one. I don't know, but we'll discuss that for sure Monday.
Did you have, on our first show, you and I talked a lot about all the guiding you do and teaching, and you've been at this game an awfully long time. Did you find it personally stressful to see what these guys are flying in and what they're, in the weather conditions they're flying in? And did you find it, I don't know, is it nerve wracking to see, because it's a totally different kind of, like you said, they're flying days that normally you'd go play pool. You wouldn't be in the air, and they're doing it over and over and over again. I mean, it's quite intense.
That was extremely stressful for several reasons. The first reason is that you give advices and you don't pay yourself the mistakes. And you have in front of you a guy that has been training for 3 or 4 years, and he's ready for that. And if you make a mistake, he's not too good. So this was one first part. The second reason is stressful is that you need to make a mix between decision you would take for the best flying and decision you take to keep a strategic position in the race. When you have, I would say, Maxime, you are playing the game, with Chrigel and Maxime. You don't want to make a move where you will see them, fly away, and from the third place, maybe you end up 10 or whatever. So you can, as we did, start at the rank, 6 or 7 and end up first, but you can also start at the place of second and end up 10, So basically, this is a big stress about that. And then the third point that was really stressful for me, but it's very personal, is that a month before I was helping a friend to fly an incredible BV flight adventure in Peru, and unfortunately he had an accident and he died. And so I was kind of nervous I am very, very confident in Pierre's skills, abilities. It's incredible pilot, but I know that in a race, people can take risks that are, different than what they would do, normally, because the pressure, because the team, because they want, to achieve something. And all my briefings, they were ending up with, okay, keep it safe. So that was like my primary concern, have fun and keep safe. And of course, the flying day at Pic du Midi was a little bit borderline, on my opinion, for everybody, that flew. But that's my vision of with my level of pilot. And of course, I'm not in their place. It's difficult, to judge this. But that was actually giving me, of course, a certain level of pressure also. So three reasons why I was kind of nervous on this race. And I want to say a big hello to Henry that had this accident in Peru. And that's like that. He didn't make any mistake, just got unlucky. So that's also the bad side of paragliding.
Yeah, of course. And of course we're talking about Antoine's partner in Peru, and then another very famous X-Alps pilot, Nick Nanens, very recently had a terrible accident, and he was supposed to be in the X-Pyr, and it is something, a part of this sport that just keeps raining down on us, doesn't it? It's not something you can really escape. But Manu, I'd love to talk to you. We're going to talk about the dramatic end while we still have a hopefully decent connection here. But I also wanted to ask you about philosophy of kind of Pierre and what it was like, in 7 days. You experience as an athlete a lot of ups and downs and the physical hardship and everything else. And, I've spent quite a bit of time with Chrigel and with Maxime, and they're very different, their approaches. Chrigel's is famously very Swiss. He doesn't get too distraught. He stays pretty positive. he always really looks like he's having a lot of fun. Krigel's just always looks like he's having a good time. Whereas Maxime can be, and he would be the first to admit this, that he can be pretty emotional, and he gets pretty upset and just a little bit more, maybe goes to the extremes more. And I'd love to just hear what's Pierre like. What is the kind of the philosophy of the team? Is it really serious? Is it really fun? And what do you think in the end works, and what worked for your team? Because you did incredibly well.
On Pierre, with Pierre, Pierre works that way. At the beginning of a project, he just, tried to set up where he wants to arrive, and he will just do what he can do, to arrive there. But it's don't forget that it was a first try. It was the very first try. We never trained before. We never went, one weekend, together, to train or do something. The first day they really did something together was the first day of the comp. So basically, we were kind of relaxed. And as you were talking about philosophy, and this is exactly what I was asking regularly to Pierre, like, what is your philosophy? Because basically in every decision you take, you can either say, okay, I am a gambler and I like to try something and maybe become first, or I want to secure my position. So basically in terms of strategy, it's really like, what is your mood? What do you have in mind? And during the race, the mood of Pierre could have changed, a couple of times, in this matter. And so I was always asking him before to propose him some options, in what was his mood, like, do you want to try something or do you want to secure your position? Therefore, as it was the first comp like this, I don't think Pierre, he had a goal to arrive, in the, I would say, 5-10 first guys, So basically, when he realized he was able to play, in this group, of the 10 first guys, he was kind of happy. And then when we made, like a couple of interesting moves, and finally we were really, in the lead, then came the questions, about, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to secure your position, or do you want to try something? And this is exactly finally what happened at the end. At one moment when we arrived close to Canigou, I had the strong feeling that we had to let Chrigel go alone and walk 6-7 kilometers, 800 meters, up to take off on the south side of the mountain. And this was at Col de Mante, a little bit before, Canigou. And actually, by chance, it happened that Pierre landed at this col. And I was like, at that moment, I was really focused on, I should tell him to land here and go past this mountain on foot and take off on the other side. But I was not sure it was very takeoffable. I was not sure, he would get, super good conditions. However, my soundings were telling me they had, like 500 meter more ceiling and more, instability on the other side of that mountain than going on the north side of the Canigou. And at that time, you're second, you have Chrigel just a little bit in front. You have Maxime in the back, and it's so hard, to take a decision that would be totally different. And so that was once again the question, what do you want to do? And at that time, I think you must be super strong to take this type of decision, believe a lot in yourself, to try that. And that's the whole difficulty of this type of race, and you're convinced of something. It's not the same situation, for instance, when Pierre is in Val Louron. In front, you have Chrigel and Maxime. The guys in the back, they are fairly far away. And you take another option. You know that if it works, you beat everybody. But if you lose, you don't lose that much. And in this situation, you are in second. You know that, maybe you're lucky and you finish first. And would you take a specific option, when you have Chrigel in front of you and the terrain is not the terrain of Chrigel? It's not like if he's flying in his garden, but you're not flying in your garden either. Meaning, Cerdagne, we hardly go fly there. I mean, I flew there, a long time ago, but this is all the memories I have. Pierre doesn't have a strong knowledge of this area, and specifically, arriving on the Canigou, like this. Usually, when you go flying in Cerdagne, you fly around Font-Romeu. You don't go, that direction too much. So basically, this was an unknown terrain. The excellent cross-country pilot of Font-Romeu, they regularly go to Serré and to the sea. It's not so often either, but we didn't have the knowledge. And so at that moment, we decided, to follow Chrigel. And then Maxime arrived. He got a little bit better thermal. He arrived a little bit higher, on that ridge of the Canigou. And he managed to climb, on this ridge, which ends up in a circus that is totally closed with the summits at 2,700 meters. And that was like so oddly he could pass. And then we saw him climb and pass and we are just like, what? And at that moment, Chrigel had such an incredible decision to land in such a nasty place, climb like a goat, super fast. And Pierre did the same, but he landed a little bit lower. It was a little bit more complicated to escape from the place he was. That was the move of Chrigel was like, he's ready to anything. He has the mirrors on. He knows what's going on in his back, and as soon as Maxime picked up altitude, then Chrigel knew what he had to do, and what he had to do was pretty wild, and Pierre did the same. But he did it, and that's it. And then at that moment, probably I would say Maxime got lucky, and then a little bit later he got unlucky, and Chrigel got lucky. But finally, what you need is to be a little bit in the front at the moment you cross the finish line, and that's what Chrigel managed to do, I would say, as usual. But this time maybe had a little bit more entertainment than other times, because Maxime was really hot and Pierre was hot too, so.
Yeah, that last day was just, it was a roller coaster, right? Pierre started the day off ahead, and then Maxime and Chrigel flew together, and they caught him up, like you said, and then it just looked like Maxime had it. It was the race was over. Maxime won, and then and suddenly Chrigel flies over his head and flies within 3 kilometers of the final turn point and wins the race. And the first thing I said to my friend Ben, who supported me in all my races, was, it's incredible. He did it again. It's so lucky. And he said, it's not luck. It's Chrigel. He does this every time. And as I understood it, he and Maxime were basically flying together, and he, like you said, he stuffed it into this really tough place and climbed up higher into better air, and then jumped him in the air. But how do you know to do that? How did he have that in his mind? Were the signs obvious, or was this just Chrigel being an eagle?
No, he didn't really had better air. What happened is that when they arrived on that ridge of the Canigou, we all knew that would be cool, to get on the little south face and climb there and pass, like Maxime did. Chrigel and Pierre, they were in the front, but they never managed. They worked a while, on this ridge to try to get on the south face. They knew they want to do this, As the other option was to fly around the north face of Canigou, and we know it's possible. but it's long and it's oddly because you get low, all the time. It's a little bit complicated, tricky, but that was, the option if you cannot climb there. So they arrived there, they try to climb, it doesn't work. So they say, okay, we start to go on the north face. At this moment, Maxime arrives just a little bit higher because he had the chance to have a thermal that climbed a little bit higher before, arrives on this ridge, and he climbs directly. Boom! And so at that moment, it was quite obvious that if you go on the top of the mountain and you take off on that south face, you will climb also. Okay, so this is for Chrigel, that was crystal clear. So this is what he did. He landed in this nasty place, climbed the mountain 400 meters, take off in another nasty place, and get, to 2,700 meters, 650, exactly like did Maxime, and pretty much takes the same route like Maxime. He follows Maxime. Then they had to cross a big valley. This is the valley of Amélie-les-Bains, which the flying site of Serré. And Maxime, he got to Serré probably, I would say, 20 minutes before Chrigel, or maybe half an hour. I cannot be, exact on this. And when Maxime arrived on Serré, he climbed on the mountain, reached 1.5, and he has the goal at 30 kilometers with a light south wind, against he's flying into the wind to get to the goal. And so he's at 1.5 and he knows it's not enough. Definitely. So he waits, he walked the place, he gets to 1.5, 1.4, 1.5, 1.4, 1.3, 1.350. And at this moment, he says, okay, if I wait more, I will end up at 1,000 meters, on the mountain. And he goes. Chrigel arrived later on in the very same place. Okay? He gets a little bit more altitude when Maxime went, finally he finds nothing. Well, he finds a little bubble, and it just passed, the highway, and he's on the ground. And Chrigel, strategically, he knows that he's behind. So strategically, there is no hurry. Pierre is far in the back. He has Maxime in front of him. If he goes for a glide, maybe for sure he gets to Maxime, a little bit behind him, and then he has to race like crazy, maybe beat him, on the running. But Maxime is quite good in running too, so basically it's not sure he will get him. So he wait, and then at one moment he goes. He has a little bit more altitude than Maxime, maybe he has 200 meters more. And in my opinion, there is a north wind passing the little col where you have the highway that is entering, the south face. And when Maxime, he went a little bit lower, then he got pretty much caught in this north airflow. And Chrigel, basically, he flew above that tube. This is my understanding, and I discussed this with some guys that are specialists of the area, and they quite believe this is what happened, is that, Chrigel, for some luck, understanding, I don't know of the situation, luck because finally he managed, to leave the mountain higher than Maxime. What could have done Maxime? He could have waited there. He could have waited there, and say, okay, I wait. But the risk is that finally, he doesn't find the thermal anymore. It was not super active, at that moment. And then he's also landed there. So his decision, in my opinion, was not bad. It's difficult to take another decision when you are half an hour in front of the followers and you don't make it again to your ceiling, and you spend already a while, trying to make it, and you're just like, okay, he's not gonna come again, I go, before it's too late. So this is the decision he took. Obviously, he was wrong, because when Chrigel arrived, he managed to climb higher, and finally he passed above the highway, and then he found another one. And the game was over at that moment. Maxime was on the ground. Chrigel was thermaling right above his head. The live tracking was pretty much fucked at that time, and so it was not so clear. I was looking at the live tracking, and I reported to Pierre, "Hey, Maxime and Chrigel are landed, on the other side of the highway." And then I looked a little bit more carefully, and Chrigel was 600 meters above the head of Maxime, and I reported to Pierre, "Okay, no, it's not like that, And unfortunately, Pierre did the same move finally. He climbed to the mountain, he took off on the south face, he managed to climb to 2650, like the two other guys. But a little bit later, when he got to Serre, he couldn't at all climb. So probably, like Chrigel arrived at the perfect moment where the conditions, they were just perfect. So he could climb a little bit higher than Maxime did. And Pierre never managed to climb at all, so it was just a window. And that's it. He got there, and he managed to climb higher. And then when he passed in the flat, he got another thermal, and then he landed, close to the finish line. But for Pierre, we had big projects. I had seen, this movement of air turning around, like the little cities I have in the flat. And so I said to Pierre, okay, we will go along the mountain, along the Albert, following the mountain before to go to the finish line. So we still had some plan, not to finish first, but maybe to finish second. But it was not possible for Pierre to climb again. The conditions, they were dead at the time he arrived. But that was just, I would say, maybe 40 minutes after Chrigel, something like this. And it was for him just impossible to climb. So that's, well, as I always say to the guys, that fly in my cross-country class, when a guy got lucky, all the time, maybe it's not luck, at the end. So maybe in our mind, it's luck, but maybe for him it's not luck, that's what your supporter says. It's true, at the end. Chrigel won, so basically we can analyze the stuff and say, okay, they went to the same place. Maxime got a little bit lower. Pierre couldn't climb, and Chrigel arrived at the moment between them, and he was able to climb higher, and then it happened super good for him. But that's I don't know. Yeah, I have a doubt, about the luck and stuff like this. Maxime would have been even a little bit more late doing the same move. Pierre and Chrigel would have been further, in the north face, and then there would have been probably no way they catch with him, So it's sometimes the point of being,
crazy timing.
At the right place at the right moment. When Maxime arrived on the Canigou, he arrived exactly at the right moment, at the right altitude to climb. And the two other guys, they were not exactly at the good altitude and not certainly at the right moment. So, well, moment, maybe not, but altitude. And then for me, I still have this question in my mind. If we had landed at Col de Mante, and if we had walked, 1 hour to take off, on the other side, what would have happened, And so that's always, a question we will never have, the answer, because it will be impossible virtually to repeat the situation.
Yeah, those questions live with you forever. There's always the what ifs of all the races I've done in the X Alps. There's always, in 2015, if I'd only done that. In 2017, I'd only done that. And yeah, it's just part of the fun and part of the adventure. Well, Manu, thanks for sharing your story. You guys rocked it. It was very impressive, and you were even out in the lead there for a while. I thought you guys had it, but nice work, and big hug to Pierre, and looking forward to racing with him here soon. And congratulations! But thanks for sharing this cool adventure you guys had with us.
Thank you, Gavin, for having me on the show, and that was a pleasure to share this. And we are quite happy to have put some fun in the race, and the fact that finally the last day Simon arrived later and flew midday while Pierre was walking, put us enough pressure to be super happy to be third, because the same thing could, well, I'm not sure, because the south wind was stronger, but we never know, Simon could have, passed above the head of Pierre while he was working on the flat. So we were definitely, all the team, super happy to be third, on the podium, because that was kind of hot, behind.
Yeah, that was that. And Simon can never be counted out either. He also had a great race. But yeah, for rookies going into such a hard event, you guys really crushed it. Very impressive.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy. If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So, for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do, and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account, and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.